Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have with me a very special guest, D.W. Ross. Ross, how are you doing today?
I'm really good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm actually really excited because when I first started thinking about doing this podcast last August, actually, right around my birthday, I had seen you a lot for book one on Twitter. And I was like, oh, I really want to get him on here. And and it just, for some reason, like other people just kept asking me. And I had you on my list for quite a while. And I was just kind of waiting for the right time. So I'm really glad that, we were able to connect and get you on today. So I'm excited.
Likewise, it was when we crossed emails and everything, I was like, this is really cool. So I love talking about books, and obviously we just had a little chat before hitting record, and you seem like a really good guy. So I'm excited for today.
Yeah. Well, my friend, he was like, oh, you should have on. I'm like, who? I love referrals. He's like, D.W. Ross. And I'm like, yeah, he's already. And they always ask me like right when you guys are coming on too. It's like serendipitous or something. Like, it's weird.
Yeah.
It's very strange. But yeah, so that's really cool. So we'll start with that first question. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
It was a bit strange, if I'm honest. I always said to myself I wanted to write one day. I always considered myself quite a creative person when it came to my imagination, but I just think I never had the confidence in myself to actually like put pen to paper. And I think I was about 28 or so, and one of my really good friends decided to get me into the world of Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, awesome.
And we would just this was pre-COVID, so we would like get around like 10 of us and do a campaign. And I think that like kick-started my creativity, where straight away I was like, okay, so I've now played this for a year. I want to DM. I'm like, I want to DM a homebrew. And then the next thing I was like, I had this world created, and I was like, I couldn't get all my friends to like play because like we were all like dads and stuff and have jobs, and there was just never a chance to get in the same room. And I was like, I couldn't stop developing like the world and little characters I was coming up with. And then the next thing I knew, it just kind of snowballed into like a story. So like I'll normally say like my writing journey started as a D&D backstory.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Now it's like a 3-book series. So it's really strange. But I think I was definitely not helped, but lockdown certainly allowed me. Like we had a really long lockdown here in the UK.
Yeah.
And we adapted ours really, really early. I think we went from I was in work on the Friday to that's it, you're completely locked down on the Monday. And I think that allowed me more time to like progress the novel because I couldn't do anything else. So this was also before my daughter was born, so I was able to just kind of write, and I think I needed it as an escape in lockdown, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Me and my wife, like all we did for like 6 months was like walk around our area and just stay in and come on like Zooms and do quizzes. But I had this little escape where I could write and kind of do that, and it was amazing.
Yeah. No, totally. I get what you're saying. Like my wife, she was like, like school was basically shut down. We were only working for like 4 hours every day remotely from home. And then it was like, you had the rest of the day, and, just wasn't sure what to do. So I was like masked up. I had, face shield, and I sat in my car and I DoorDash. Like they would take the food up front to you from like a window. It was like the coolest thing because like I made a lot of money, and I would go around, it was a nice break from the house, and I would go around and I'd listen to audiobooks, and then I would do the audio record, and then I'd come home and I'd get a bunch done. It was a very interesting time to write, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I felt like it was very helpful.
Yeah, it was definitely helpful because you had the time, but I also feel like sometimes it was hard because I know obviously the world is not in a great stage just now, but back then, like this was obviously like pre the war in Ukraine and everything, and I think back then it really was all doom and gloom for really suddenly.
Totally.
Like it went from like 1 week of me saying, okay, let's book this festival ticket, let's go, let's book this vacation, this holiday, let's do all these things, to you cannot do anything.
Yep.
And then you kind of get sucked into this little bubble where you just watch the news all the time, and then at first everybody's like, it's just the flu, and then the next thing you see the number of people catching it and sadly passing away, and it really like compartmentalizes just how sad it was. And I think that actually was finding it harder to write like a hopeful novel.
Oh, for sure.
Because it was, I don't know if you were the same, but like the time was great to be able to really sink in and maybe spend like 8 hours solid in front of a laptop going, this is really good, but it was draining, if you know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean.
No, I do. My best friend goes, so I was like, haven't let him read anything, but I've talked to him a lot about draft one. And he was like, man, he goes, your book is such a COVID book. And I'm like, what are you trying to say? He's like, it's so depressing. He was like, you get this, I got these two friends, and it's a tragedy. But I told him, I'm like, well, that's great though. I said, because especially now, I'm like, because I said, I've had, two like the three pre-planned really, where it's like, you get the tragedy now and like the fall, but then like book two makes it worse. But then I'm like, by book three, I said if you're depressed after book one, I was like, you're gonna absolutely love book three, and
Yeah.
trying to give, because I wanted to do that. I don't know. I agree with you. It's just, it was so hard for a while there to have a lot of hope, because nobody knew
Yeah.
when a vaccine was going to come around. It just seemed like things were getting worse, and it really was. It was like, I just kept telling myself like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Like, but it's, I think it's hard too for people, because, you know, like with the Spanish flu or whatever, when it came around, it's like, it was devastating, but it wasn't quite as devastating, and now we have a much
Yeah.
bigger population. So it was definitely, I try to put in historical context because it makes me feel better.
But
But
but it's a fair thing to say, because I think one of the things that made it so much worse was just how close everyone is to the news these days.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, if you think about back when like the Spanish flu happened, like obviously you had like the closure of the First World War, and then that happened, but
yep,
you have limited access to news, and when you do have access to it, it's in small doses.
yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe be a newspaper or a newsreel or something. Whereas now I can just type anything into a search engine and I can get the most depressing results I possibly want,
yeah,
and at my fingertips. And I think everybody had like a morbid curiosity with COVID,
yeah,
because
yeah.
you just, I mean, I don't know, me personally, I just wanted to be informed,
No,
but
yeah,
then
no,
it got a wee bit out of hand, because I was
yeah,
like, you see the figures and
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I
Well,
don't know. I actually think like I'm looking at a copy of Cold from the North, by the way. I'm not just staring off into the distance, but I think Cold from the North ended up being quite hopeful. I don't know if around about the time I finished it was actually when we got out of our first lockdown.
mm,
So that was around September 2020. So I think maybe I was a bit more prosperous
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
given it a nice spin at the end.
yeah, yeah. Well, they always say, right? Like art imitates life. So,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, I feel like that's totally fair. And my buddy, we talked a lot about, I tried getting my friend to like co-write a book with me, and he's just like, I'm not there yet, which I get, everybody's got to, hit that spot, when you're ready.
Yeah.
But I have one where I like had started the outline, and I was like, you know what? I was like, let's talk about this whole like COVID thing really in like a fantasy aspect. And I was like, and then I had it started and I was like, I just think it's too soon. But like next year, for instance, I'd love to release, like I have it's almost like COVID, but it only affects mages. So anybody, it's like, let's say if
Nice.
you were a Star Wars and you're force sensitive, like only you have to worry about it. And,
Nice.
then the muggles or whatever are worried that it's going to transform and then attack them. So they're attacking mages.
Mhm.
So not only do the main characters have to find a cure, but they also have to fight through all these people, and I feel like it was very similar to those feelings, and we just decided like, my other friend and I, we were like, it's probably too soon. But we did want to touch on those human concepts, of like when somebody coughed, everybody just stops at Walmart or in the grocery store. When you do go in, you're like, what? You okay? Like, just
Just
the,
goes right. Everyone goes right
yeah,
around that
yeah.
person. Yeah.
Everybody just leaves the carts, and we talked about that too, where like speaking of being so, so close to the news, like, I mean, now it's like you get it sent to you, right? You don't even have to look it up, like Yahoo or Gmail or, Twitter. They like Twitter, war in Ukraine, I had to like unfollow it because I was just like getting so angry every day. And I'm like, I'm a history teacher, so I'm like, I get like, why, countries, like literally when Putin was like looking right at, I felt like he was looking right at Biden in the United States, and actually UK, and France in particular, and like, don't get involved, or
Oh, was
World War
that
Three.
the night of the 23rd
Yep,
of February?
yep.
Yeah, I
And
remember
like,
that because
that was a big threat, and
it was intense.
it was very intense, and I was literally like, holy moly. I was like, Hitler just like stared us in the camera and told us to not do anything, or like I was in like that quote, like consequences like you've never seen.
You've never seen it.
I was
It
like, we
felt
dropped two bombs on Japan. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I just, it was very like, my kids freaked out the next day, you know, and they were like, blah, 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 you know, and they kind of, I think, felt better too. We put it in historical context, you know, and yeah, but it's funny because like you know, I have a couple of people that I knew, you know, through friends and stuff, and we're following on TikTok through the Ukraine, and a couple of female authors actually, and I don't know if they're alive, you know, like it's, so my friend, he was like talking about, you know, that as well, and he's just like, he's had a really hard time, you know, writing something more hopeful, you know, and I can't blame him, you know, like he lives in Poland, and you know, he's literally seeing these people, you know, coming by day after day. I actually had a friend, he was in the DMZ zone on Poland, like his feet were literally like there, and he's pulling refugees over the border, you know, and he's just like, oh, I'm just ready to go in there. And he's like, I get why not. He's like, but he's like, you see these kids who are walking without parents, you know, and stuff, you know, and like he had one girl who he, you know, made sure she got to someone safe, and you know, and I mean, I get that, you know, and he's like, it was so hard after, you know, the pandemic, you know, where you did feel like things were going here, and then all of a sudden, you know, you get kind of blindsided. But I do want to just touch it real quick, because I do think it, you know, there was a lot of burnout, like you said. I know a lot of people that wrote their first book like you, you know, for the first book, or wrote a book and they poured it into it, their COVID book. And then I think that's what happened to me, because I have been able to finish it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I definitely agree with you. From a writer standpoint, it was just, it was very interesting. I think everybody bled out on the page, and then everything was just there. And some people were able to pick themselves up, and other people like myself just kind of, you know, need a minute to step away in order to come back, because I think all those
Yeah.
feelings and emotions are there. So I definitely agree with you, and I definitely understand that
Yeah,
concept.
I'm the same as you just now. Like I really struggled when everything started happening in Ukraine. I know it's really easy to say this from like a position of safety when I live in like
Totally
the
agree.
UK and everything. Like I know it's really easy to say, but like when you see, and it's another thing when we go back to having like the news at your fingertips, when you see the devastation, like I think for the first couple of days, like I saw some things on Reddit and things, and I was just like, I need to actually completely pull myself away from this. I was like, I can't
Yeah.
allow myself, because I don't know why, but it just has a really, really profound effect on me. I
Yeah.
know that's
Yeah.
just a human thing, but
Yeah.
some people I don't think maybe have an interest in like geopolitics or the news or history the way I do and you do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think maybe they don't necessarily, they see the horror, but I don't think it hits them as hard.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think I saw it and it like I had to like take a step back. Like I was so close to finishing book 3, and I just had to be like, that's not a priority right now. My priority right now is trying to get my mind right of the fact the world's effectively on fire again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
now I've got a daughter. It was like, right, I need to make sure I'm okay for her, like kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
thing. And
No,
seeing
totally.
like so many, I think one of the things that hit me the hardest was like seeing so many like women and children, like, and they had to leave their husbands behind
Yeah. Yeah.
to fight and stuff. And it was just the courage from
Yeah.
all sides, like to A, to stay, B, to leave, and make sure your babies and your kids get to safety. And it was just, oh, it was harrowing. And I just, yeah, I was the same as you. Like it drained me. It
Yeah.
completely drained me.
Yeah.
And I know that's a bit of a segue, but you're right. Like I think, and then the thing that happened in Booker,
Mm,
well, like the actual alleged or whatever you want to call it, war
yeah. Yeah.
crimes, like that hit me again, and I was just like, how can humans be? And I don't know if it is because of my dad now. Like I just feel hyper emotional when it comes to people doing hurt to others. But it was
Yeah.
like I've written since, but it doesn't feel the same. If you know what I mean. It's
Oh no, I know,
as
I
you were
do.
saying,
Yeah.
like you bleed onto the page. Do you know what I mean? But now I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not anymore. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like there's something holding it back, and I don't know
No.
if it's
Yeah.
just because there is a hell of a lot of suffering. It's harder to enjoy things just now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like my friend, like we went to Comic-Con, you know, like last weekend, and my wife and I, like, we have certain things scheduled, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm like kind of at the point where I'm like, you know, I'm taking off the summer to write, and I'm like really want to get a lot done, because I'm like, one of my kids made a comment in my history class, and he was like, oh, I forgot that was still going on. And I said, see, you have that ability because you live in this country. You know, I said, we're geographically, you know, further away. I said, and relatively, except for Pearl Harbor, I said, at 9/11, I said, we've been relatively safe, you know, since 1776, you know, I said, and we we have that freedom and that ability to not think about it, and that makes me think about it even more, and it's crazy to see people, like literally like Americans, which I have a lot of respect for them, like 45, 55, they're retired from Army or, whatever, or Marines, and they're just heading over. They're leaving their wives and kids and they're heading over, they're coming up to the UK, going to Poland, and then walking across the border, into,
Yeah.
it's like, it's crazy, and it's, and I have friends that live in Russia too, who are, very, very angry that, that's going on. And it makes it again like a very interesting situation, I think, where my friend made a point. He's like, I feel like I have to write,
Yeah.
to get these emotions down, kind of like the historian Dukier from Malazan Book of the Fallen, where he sees so much death, destruction, devastation, but he wants to still highlight the the important values of what's
Mhm.
really going on. And I definitely agree with him. I'm like, like, I think it'd be very interesting to write a book where that type of thing happens to a group of people, but to
Yeah.
showcase the really, the heroic things, the courage, and really, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings, right? Like that's like that whole concept, right? Is that they're overpowered, they, have to come together and find allies where they can, and it's like, I don't know. It just my friend was like, he was
Yeah.
like, who ruined the world? Like who pressed the button? Who found the Pandora's box? He's like, somebody needs
Yeah.
to put it back in, like something. But it definitely makes it interesting as a writer, I feel like, because
Yeah.
you have to
Even
figure it out, right? Like in order to move
yeah.
forward for yourself. I mean,
Even what you just said there, like I just thinking about it, like just finding the hope and finding the heroes
yeah,
in the situation, like, and I suppose that's something that we do already, but we maybe do it subconsciously when we're looking at the bravery of the people
yeah, yeah, yeah,
living there in defiance and being like, no, I'm not going to leave my house. And
yeah.
so maybe it's like flipping it on. It's as much as it's a horrible situation that there's incredible bravery, and it's just
Well, it's interesting to see like people that
it's
were,
guilt, isn't it? It's guilt.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting like people like Uber drivers, like going into a war zone just to get people out, and like
yeah,
not chart, and gas is very expensive in Poland,
yeah,
obviously, right now. And it's like, it's crazy to think that, because my kids kept talking about this and that. I said, I get it. I said, but you guys also have to be able, and I told them it was nice because there were a lot of stories that popped up, like the one man that got ran over by a tank, and they didn't know if he was Ukrainian or Russian or what was going on, and but everybody like helped him out, and like he survived. Like I told them, I was like, I said, in the history books you only see the battles, the devastation. I said, you don't hear about the farmer here in America where all of his neighbors were Japanese Americans and got put in internment camps. So he paid all their taxes. He was like 22, right? 22 white man. Like you just didn't expect this in that area at that time. Did all their fields and paid all their taxes. And the entire time they were in the internment camp. So I save those kind of stories all the time to show them that there's these horrible things going on, but people are also doing the great things. And unfortunately, history is a lot like the news. They only report on the bad things, and I said, we talk about slavery a lot, and that's where our like stuff starts. And where I teach right now. And it's like, I tell them, I'm like, there's a lot of slavery, there's a lot of horrible things. I said, but people are literally giving up their lives and their freedom to help, on the Underground Railroad. I'm like, it's an illegal organization, and I said, it goes to show you not all laws are just laws, and it gets very interesting, I think, when
yeah.
you add these new situations. But it's definitely like opened my mind up to, I think, writing in a different way, if that makes sense. Like I
Mhm.
had never considered certain possibilities, and it really makes me feel more connected to writers from the past, like Tolkien, for instance.
Yeah, he would
You
have
know what I
seen some
mean?
shit.
Like, yeah, and you're just like, whoa, like, and I just think like just the human perspective, I think, it adds, I just think it adds another layer onto it, and I think it adds
Mhm.
another layer onto the writing itself. But at least for me personally, I don't know.
No, I think I'm in the exact same boat. Like it's definitely made me more considerate of what I'm writing in a way. And
Yeah, I
like,
totally agree.
so yeah, but it's an interesting take.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, that was an awesome question.
I know, sorry, that was a
So
big segue, but
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I got a lot out of it. It made me think of a lot. And I really liked where you said finding the heroes within the situation. So if somebody comes to fantasy and sci-fi podcast and does not like that quote alone, and it makes you think something. This is probably the wrong podcast
I
for you.
can't take credit for that. That was you. It was you that said
Oh,
that.
that's good. I'm gonna give you credit for that one. That was a good one. I
All
like
right.
that. I'm gonna use that as a blurb, and I'm gonna put your name on it
Oh
for one of my
God.
books. So, uh, so I know, but for our audience, what genre do you currently write in, and why?
I would say it's like kind of high fantasy, epic fantasy, a bit of a mix of the both. More epic, I would say, than high, because I don't really have any like fancy like races or anything, no elves, dwarves, or anything like that. But why? I think it's just because that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Got like a really, really, really big fondness for like medieval history. Love big battles. I think if you were to look at like all my favorite films and stuff, they would probably center around films that had massive, massive battles, and usually like pitch battles, so sword battles in a field, little to no artillery. Do you know what I mean? Literally just
Yeah, yeah.
mano y mano, just going for it with sharp weapons. But I think that's why I think that's kind of the element that I really enjoyed and wanted to write about, was that kind of war setting. And then also I think it's probably because of where I'm from, and just because of like the things that I surround myself with culturally. Cold from the North started off being quite influenced by like the Norse side of things.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's a lot of like Norse, not references, but even some of the names, like Olaf Haraldsbane is your main character. That's obviously quite Norse. But then it was also like the kind of medieval castles, Spanish castles, yeah, that's why I think, is I'm just I'm a bit of a nerd.
I understand that feeling.
Yeah, it's the best way to be. Like I used to be quite guarded about what I was interested in. And then eventually I think I stopped drinking alcohol about 2.5 years ago, and I was just like, fuck it. Like,
Yeah.
do you have it? Oh, sorry, can I swear on? Yeah.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I
All right.
put a yeah,
Obviously,
yeah. We put the parental thing on. It's their
I was
fault.
just like, screw it. Like, why do I need to hide like the kind of things I'm interested in? And
No, totally.
ever since, it's just been like kind of embracing the geekiness. And one of the
Yeah.
things that it came with was D&D and in the books.
Oh man, we just got done playing last night. I'm doing a campaign in my own fantasy world that I write in. So it's been so fun to
Is this
develop.
Uma?
Yeah. It's been
Nice.
really
Okay, cool.
fun to it's been really fun to to like last night in particular, I got to showcase a lot of things that are just mine. And like just like an air elemental trap where the trap, it's on the ground, and it's like a statue, and the air elemental almost like fuses with it and takes it with it and becomes like a snake. And it was really cool. Like, and then they like tried getting away and the door was too small. Well, the statue stayed behind like its husk, but the air elemental came out, and it was cool. Like, there's a couple of things I can't say because I'm writing it in books, but it was neat
Yeah.
afterward because everybody was like, oh, blah blah. Like there was just some things that came up, and they were like, oh, this was so cool. And there was some things that I try to do that I thought would always be neat, and I've
Yeah.
taught science and social studies for quite some time, and I like to put it in there. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was cool though, to see people. But yeah, I feel like it's gonna be cool like yours, right? Like putting that type of DM situation in, and having people, because one of my friends just like read your book too for you, and he was like, this was so cool. And I thought, I was like, oh man, that's got to be really neat. So I can't wait for that moment. So yeah, it's interesting, right? But yeah, D&D is definitely one of those where I tell people all the time, like I think it's just so helpful even from a player's perspective, and
Oh yeah. It's
yeah,
just I think it's probably the most like it's. I mean, I find it more fun than any video game I've ever played. Like I grew up
heck
playing
yeah,
video games, and then I started playing D&D, and I was just like, why have I been wasting my time on video? And
yeah,
it like not that they're a waste of time, but just you can go in with your friends, and like I played in a couple of different groups where like some people were maybe more wanting to role play than others, and then others were maybe just really technical. And I was like, this is just fun because
yeah,
you can just do whatever you want to an extent,
yeah,
as long as you've got like a good DM.
yeah.
And yeah, it's the opportunities in it are endless, and it's just so much fun.
They really are though, because like for
Yeah,
us, like my friend, my old boss, I was working at a gaming bar last year just for some like fun and something to do after the pandemic for the summer. And he was like, oh, you should do what I do. He goes, I do story points. He goes, I give a story point out the first game, And then anytime someone does something really cool that helps drive the story, if they're role playing or whatever, it's a way to encourage their, role playing and
Mhm.
unique situations and problem solving. So he'll award a story point. So yesterday we had somebody with the air elemental, and I do my own races. So I have like kind of like a Yanti like type of thing. And I gave them, I let them choose if their character select specialization. So let them choose if like you want like to, when you increase level, do you want to increase your tail whip ability, which is a special ability, or do you want to do like whisper of venom and spit like a
Mhm.
venom loogie? And my friend was like, yeah, I'm definitely spitting venom loogies. So the air elemental came up and was about to attack somebody, and he like rose up on his tail as tall as he could and spit a venom loogie right in this thing's face. And I was like, that's a story point right there. That's awesome. And then there's
I
somebody
love
else
it.
had like such a cool, oh, somebody else like was pretending, like deceiving and pretending with this guard to, because there's like kidnapped children and stuff involved, and they're from his orphanage, and he's like really PO'd. So he like takes his cane with like like a bronze hawk and goes under the guy's chin, and he literally just like threatens him so well, very calmly. And the line was so good, I wrote it down in my notes. I was like, yeah, that's a story point. And
Oh
then
yeah,
something
sure.
else happened, and I said, I was like, only in D&D, can you have these a venom spit loogie, this half crippled guy, like literally, threatening this guy like he's a god
Yeah.
himself. It was such a good line. And then you have, there was like two other situations. Like we have a Pickens who's like a rabbit folk, and he just did some cool stuff, and it was just so much fun. And I was like, this is why I played this game, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's so
You
worth
get
it.
those moments,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then they like live forever. Like those moments
Yep.
now are the moments I used to have at like when I would go out with my friends, and you'd
Yeah,
have
yeah.
those moments that you would talk about for years. And usually, obviously, they're a bit debaucherous, right? Whereas now it's like D&D moments where you're like, oh, do you remember that time that you? And
There's
now
stories
that's
you can
that's
actually
that's like,
share. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah.
Not
And
have to
that's
worry.
it's one of the one things I'm really excited for. Like my daughter's one in like 2 and a bit weeks, and I think in about 3 or 4 years I'll probably try and like ease her into
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
play this little game, this wee game of D&D, and just see if you, and then maybe I'll have like a little army of kids of my own that will just like
Oh,
play
that'd
in
be
my
cool.
worlds all the time. That would be
Yeah.
amazing.
I always see the dads like that where, they're like, oh, my kid just did his last campaign until he goes to college with us or whatever. And, then they got like four of them. Yeah, I always tease my wife. I was like, three would be a okay adventuring party.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good party. Yeah, they could one of
Yeah.
them could bring a friend, then you've
Yeah,
got a
yeah,
good
yeah.
four.
No, that's fair.
Like,
Yeah. That's
but you don't
very
need
fair.
four. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fair. It's usually the best ones, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for that third one there, so what are your Onyxborn Chronicles about, and how did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so the Onyxborn Chronicles is about the. Try not to give too much away because I'm talking from the point of finishing book 3, which I've
Oh
just
yeah, yeah.
done.
That's exciting.
So, so I know how it goes, but I don't want anyone else to. But basically, there's a. Let's just put it this way: there's gods. One of them wants to come back to power and prominence. In order to do so, he has put some influence in the world of mine. And the Onyxborn Chronicles is about the kind of struggle to see whether the baddies, let's just call them, will be successful or not. And it's a bit of a story of like friendship and camaraderie and war, really. And just how this group who are not really connected at the beginning have to really come together in order to try and stop this evil from happening. And yeah, so book 1 is a bit of a scene setter. Book 2 apparently doesn't stop. And book 3, to quote one of my beta readers, is just a complete and utter story of emotional damage. So I don't know what that means, but yeah.
That
So
TikTok
here,
meme.
yeah, that's that. I didn't know what it was, and then he told me, and then
I can't
here,
wait for
here
them to
they,
hold it up. Yeah, yeah, those are
there they
great.
are.
I like book 1 would like cover looked amazing, but book 2, like I can't get over the axe, man. Like, and the blue, like
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite covers from the last year. Yeah. And I love the trees and like the north in the background. Like it's just so, my friend said, he was like, this book, he's like, it's just so fantasy. Like
yeah. I don't know, when I was doing it, like I've got like the best designer ever named Cherie, and I was talking to her and we were doing like the concept and stuff. And I won't lie, like I was very influenced by John Gwynn's covers because I just
Oh
loved
yeah,
them. Like
they're
they were
incredible. Yeah.
beautiful. I love big weapons on the front and everything. And then we were playing around and we couldn't find like a lifelike axe that was right.
Mm,
And I was like, let's find like a one that looks like it should be in like a game. Let's
yeah,
find
yeah.
like so I think we found it on Shutterstock or
Oh,
Alamate or
that's
one of
cool.
those like stock sites, and it's just yeah, she's absolutely nailed it. But then if you do this, like it's also on the
Oh,
inside.
that's cool. No one showed me that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Oh, that's super cool. That's what I said to my buddy. I was like, that's one that I, like I could do quite a few on Kindle. Like I think I have book 1 free on Kindle. I was like, no, book 2, I'm buying in person. I'm like,
oh
that's one
yeah.
that I
I'll,
want to
I'll
be
I'll
like
send you
on the
some.
shelf. Oh, that's
I'll
awesome.
send you some. Yeah, yeah,
Oh man, yeah, that's like, I it's just so funny because I was like, oh yeah, book 1, I'm really excited, and then book 2, I was just like, this is why I'm into fantasy. Like I actually
appreciate
used to
that.
teach graphic design, and like
Oh,
that, so
nice.
so that cover is just like I just thought it was really cool. I couldn't get over it. I literally stared at it one day, and my friend, I sent him everything because he's the same way, and we go back and forth with trying to decide. Like I actually really like the old school like Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance covers, and that's the
Yeah,
kind of
oh, the
stuff.
Dragonlance cover is
Yeah,
amazing.
and
Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff I like, but then I saw yours and I'm like, son of a gun. I was like,
yeah,
look at DW Ross's A Call from the North. My friend's like, that is really cool. And so we're always looking, because we're never quite sure, and sometimes like he's my tech guy. So we talked about, maybe doing some Photoshop and then sending this and that, to help with
yeah,
costs and stuff. But I'm just like, oh, I'm like, maybe I do want to do that now, like something like
yeah,
similar, and yeah, it's fun. I like covers that really make you like, you can't not look at them, and you have to buy the
yeah,
physical book to have it in your hand. And yeah,
yeah.
that's definitely one of them.
I'm a sucker for that. I have so many books that I don't even really know the premise of. I just really like the cover and
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
and
No, I totally get
yeah.
that. My wife, she's like, I'm just gonna start buying you prints, and you just put them all, like I'm like, that's fair. We're trying to get a little bit bigger house just so I have a bigger space, just so I can, just so I can buy, like the prints of covers. That way, maybe not buy
Yeah,
as
yeah,
many
yeah.
physical books. But now I'm like addicted to Kindle because a lot of my friends have like done, I'm like, even some that I, like had physical, they're like 99 cents or something. So I'm like,
Yeah.
buy it, buy it now.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do
that's
that.
good.
Like, this is what I'm reading just now.
Ooh.
Elborn by
Oh
Daniel.
yeah, I
Um,
I I have Daniel, like I have an email ready to send to him, so I'm really
yeah,
hoping that second part of season 2 that I can get him on. Yeah,
there
everybody's
you go.
been,
There's the segue.
yeah, everybody's
I'm
been
the
like,
same.
let's
So
do it.
I have that, but it's a chunky book,
Yeah,
and trying to read it while having a 1-year-old is
yeah,
not
yeah,
easy.
yeah.
So I can hold her when she's sleeping, and I can just go on my Kindle. So
That's why I got
it's
the Kindle. That's so funny you said that. That's why I was with my nephews all the time, and I was like, yeah, I was like, this is Toll the Hounds, so here it is, and
yeah.
it's like 1,300
So
pages,
chunky.
and yeah, you can't even read it when you're holding a baby. So
No.
yeah, that's where I grabbed the Kindle, or I have them. I like it because I have it on my phone, and if we're
Yeah,
somewhere,
oh, same,
or
same, same.
yeah,
Anywhere I am, I can just go
yep,
like, you were on page 72. Would you? Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
excellent. Let's just keep
yep.
going.
Yep. Yeah. That way you never lose I always lose I have to do 2 bookmarks now with him, with my oldest nephew. It's like he'll knock it out of my hand or he'll pull it
Yeah.
out. And I'm like, no, like I want to pay attention. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really excited to see book 3 for you. I'm really can't
Yeah.
wait. I love seeing people's, the covers, especially, like all lined up. And it just
Yeah.
it makes me feel good that, when people have book 3 done, that, like that, like I don't know. It's just it's like a cool milestone, It's like, yeah, he did it, like it's just one of those things. So I had a lot of
I can't
people
believe
that did that.
I can't believe it's done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's so
I just
exciting.
can't believe it. So, but yeah,
Uh,
when I get the third book, I will send you some copies.
oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I'm trying to do
Yeah.
giveaways. We're working on the iPad now because we're going to shows next year, and
Nice.
we're going to give out posters, which has the QR codes. We're starting to put them up in like, I'm actually like when I go on vacation this year, I'm not just going on vacation. I'm like scouting areas that have, that are heavily influenced fantasy and like in sci-fi communities. People that have maybe some bigger cons or we're going to some very popular, like world famous like comic book stores and stuff like that. So I'm hoping I could just like be like, hey, can you just put this poster up and kind of help
Yeah.
grow the audience that way. And But yeah, so like we're trying to give that away. We're trying to work the iPad where people could sign up for your newsletter, for instance, and do a couple rounds and, like sign up. Well, the Syracuse one near us is pretty big. So we're hoping that's like our first one in October. So I'm definitely looking for people that want to send signed copies because we're trying to get as many people for your guys' newsletters. So we'll do like one drawing for, ticket for if they sign up for your newsletter. We're actually thinking about doing two because we want that to be the most important one. Or like if you're like, oh, Twitter's my main thing, bam, we do two for that one.
Yeah.
Instagram's your thing, we'll do two for that one. And that way, they'll just sign up, for all of your stuff instantly. And hopefully, we looked at an algorithm and it was surprising that like 69% of people did not unsubscribe. So that's actually more,
That's
right?
a lot.
Yeah, that's actually more. I think recently the new survey we saw was something like 62 or something like that, but you're still over 50%, versus, screaming out into the void. And all you have to do is send one book, and then we can just be like, bam. So it was very interesting. And we have, we're trying to get a calendar together for that too. So like, it'd be like October and then, maybe if we did one in like June or something like that, that way different people could switch off. We're trying to do like 5 at a time. That way people will be like, oh, this is cool. I sent it for D.W. Ross and Mark Timoney and H.L. Tinsley or, or whatever all at once. But it was interesting. We went to one recently.
You've got H.L. Tinsley on today, don't you?
Yep. Well, I was glad the first time she was really busy because she was on book 2. So then this time I was like, I'll just try again. She was like, oh yeah.
We were in the same Spiffbo.
Yep.
Blog. Like
yeah.
First round. Yeah, we were both in the same one.
Oh, dude, that's like my brother's watching the NFL draft right now this whole weekend. Like that's his holiday. And for me, that's my holiday. Like seeing you guys, you know what I mean? Like progress. And like this upcoming one's cool for me because like this year and next year's because I have so many people that I interviewed where I'm just like, I feel like I have like a personal stake in it now, like, so I'm just like, go. So it was really cool. It was so neat to see people that, I got to talk to like yourself and, just head up there. I was like, that's so neat. It's just, it adds a whole different, perspective to it, but yeah, that's cool. So how many books do you plan in this series and how did you come up with that number?
3. So
you just broke my friend's heart.
I know, sorry. Cold from the North, The Darkest Dusk, and then The Fury of Fate will be out in July.
Oh, I love your titles.
Thank you. So The Fury of Fate is the last one. It almost stretched to 4, but I just didn't need it. It just ended up being that The Fury of Fate will be, I'd say, about 30% longer than the other 2 books. But
cool.
It's that way where the story's told. Like I'm really, really content with how everything goes. Content's probably the wrong word. I'm happy. I'm really happy with how everything plays out. But that'll be it. I don't think we'll get any more from that world. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. My friend's gonna cry when he sees this.
Tell him sorry.
Well, you know what I told him though? I said, well, that's probably what he's gonna say now. I said,
I know.
Never know.
I know.
Because I always think it's funny because Tolkien's like, he's like, I read a correspondence with him where he's like, yeah, but 3 books or whatever, and then I'm like, I was like, well, Hobbit came out too, so
exactly.
That's funny. Well, yeah, that's a great title though. Like all of yours, like in particular, I'm just like, so I've used particularly Cold in the North, to reference quite a bit on here and with private conversations, in terms of actually both books, in terms of, really showcasing, what the genre is with the cover, blurb's excellent, and just the title itself, and I think myself, I struggle with titles. And like I see yours and I write, I wrote them down, and there were a couple other people too, particularly within the last couple of years, where I'm like, okay, like how do I do that, and I feel like they definitely convey the genre, and they do a really good job of advertising your books for you. And I just was listening to a podcast recently, and they were talking about that, and I think particularly book 2 for you, I mean, just what a great title, cover and everything. I think it just sells itself really, if you're into the genre. So yeah,
I think they're good and they're like
cover.
I think they're good and they're like poppy. Like I think that's one of the things I said to Cherie was I need them to pop. Like need them. Like I used to, like I say in a previous life, I used to collect records.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and I just remember like how a record cover would catch my eye.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then I
yeah,
would be
for
like, I
sure.
wouldn't even need to know the band or
Yep.
whatever it was. I would just be like, well, that's a cool looking record. I want that. And then I was like, the aesthetics of everything needs to be really, really on point. And that's why when I spoke to Cherie and she sent me like the drafts and everything, I was like, yeah, you get me. You
Yeah, yeah.
completely understand the level I'm on. And even like putting the imagery on the naked cover and stuff, like it was
Oh,
just like
cool.
all these little things that I'm like, these are things I need because I'm a bit of a, I just like a physical product.
Yeah,
Always
yeah.
have.
No, yeah, totally. Well, it's funny because like we saw yours at one of the bookstores recently, and I had just like got my quota and I was just like, oh man. And my wife's like, we
Was it on Broken Binding?
no, actually it was in person. We have a bookstore
Oh,
near
all
us,
right.
near my mother-in-law's. Well, it's not really us, it's like 4 hours, but we go there and it's amazing. They have gotten so many independent books lately. And like just like their stores, I mean, and they grab some Amazon, I mean, just all over. Like it's crazy to see
Mhm.
how they're really been booming since the pandemic. You could tell that people are, so it's helped me out because I
Yeah.
gotten so many. I don't have to special order because I don't want to do it through Amazon, so I can just buy it there, order it there, and it's cheaper for me, and everybody gets the same amount of sales but Amazon,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like. Sorry, Amazon, if you're listening to this. But yeah, it was like we walked by and she was like, ooh, dang. And I was like, I told you. She's like, what do you think? I was like, I can't even fit it in my bag right now. I was like so mad. And then we went back like like because there were 3 copies, and we went back like just a few days later, or sorry, a few weeks later. And I was like, I like we didn't even park yet. And I was like already heading to the bookstore, and like all 3 copies of your book were gone. I was like, it was maybe like 10 days. I was so mad at myself. I told her, I said, see, this is why I don't wait. I said, this is why I don't wait.
Yeah.
I just get it. And I said, clothes, I don't care, like I'll get another, piece of clothing. I don't care. Like hats, shoes, I'm like, I don't care. But books, I'm like, I don't like to wait for that reason. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, now it's got to be on my list, and
I
she's
get
like,
that.
yeah, list is like that
Don't
big,
worry,
yeah.
I'll hook you up. I'll hook
No,
you
I
up.
appreciate that. That's awesome. Okay. So number 5 there. What are some experiences you had writing book 1 versus book 2 and book 3? I don't know why that one got cut off there. I've seen quite a few people recently finish book 3. So it's been cool this season to really learn from you guys from those different experiences. So I was just curious, like just in general, like, like some people like just said I think Bartel just said that he thought book 2 was his easiest one, which I thought was interesting because now everybody gets Empire Strikes Back. Some people,
Yeah.
book 3 is easier, some people book 1. So what was your general experience between the different books?
Book two was the easiest by far.
Wow,
Well,
really?
I think it's because I knew where I had to get to, but it wasn't a hard stop, if you know
That's
what I mean.
fair. Yeah,
So
yeah,
like
that's
right
fair.
throughout the editing process and things, it was quite fluid. Like I knew where I had to get, but I knew that I could leave things open that I could
Yeah, yeah.
close in book three. Whereas book one was hard because it was trying to find like the right finish point and like trying to dust enough of the lore and
Yeah,
things
yeah.
to make it interesting but not give everything away.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
in book one, there's not really a whole lot about the Onyx Spawn, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it's referenced and like they kind of learn what it is and why it's important and why it's effectively against what they stand for, but they don't really find out anything about it. But
Yeah.
then book two, things kind of start coming to life in a big way. And there's a lot more battles, a lot more fighting, and the kind of scope of where the war touches
Mm.
opens up in a big way. So I think that was probably the most fun for me
Yeah, yeah.
because you could just have fun with it. Like I say, I could just segue into like a new thread and then be like, I'll worry about that later.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, now I'm kicking myself because in book three I've been like, why the fuck did I write that? I'm like, how did I write that one bit that I thought was so good there? And then I'm like, now I have to resolve that, um, which obviously
The
leaves me running
corners.
around a little bit. But like for example, it's not really a spoiler, but like Ogle gets injured, doesn't not dead or anything. Like he gets injured at the end of book two, and I remember like when I got to right in the beginning of book three, I was like, why the blooming hell did I? Why did I do that? Because then I had to be like, right, well, how do I still make him capable, because he's got a lot to do
Yeah, yeah,
to close this book out. So book 3 was a treat. I always knew where I wanted it to finish. One of the things I knew before finishing the first book was how the main story, if you want, would end. I knew in my head exactly how that was going to happen. So I just knew where to get to. But sometimes it was the connecting the dots. I had a big document that basically was called Harkbacks to Previous Books, and it was
Oh,
where
that's cool.
I'd reread Code from the North and then The Darkest Dusk, and I'd reread them and took notes on everything where I'm like, reference this or like reference that, or because I mean, even if it's just little musings, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to get more than a sentence, but I'll feel satisfied knowing if in book 3 I've referenced something from book 1 that
Yeah,
might have
yeah,
been significant. Do you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like, or
Oh, for
even just
sure.
going back and being like, I said Oglethorpe was really proficient with this, then let's make sure I reference that a bit more in case it's needed. So just stuff like that.
That's a good
But
idea.
book 1 was a slog. Book 2 was a breeze, and book 3 was hard because I don't know if I wanted to say goodbye to it. If you know
Yeah,
what I mean,
that's fair. Yeah, yeah.
it was hard putting a close on it.
Well, that's like the TV show Castle with Nathan Fillion. I got
Mhm.
rewatched all the seasons, and then my friend just asked me last night. He's like, "Did you finish the last episode of the show?" And I said, "No." I said I don't want to say goodbye to it. I said I have like 38 minutes left in the entire show, and I told him I was like, I might finish it when like I'm on my deathbed. I'm like, because it was so much fun. It was like it really inspired me to write again for the second time, like when I started back up again, like high school and college in particular. And I just it means a lot to me, so I totally understand that. I could only imagine like a couple of characters having to finish them off, finish their story and just be like, oh, like, can I really do
Yeah.
that? But I
I
feel like you
wrote, I
spend so
wrote
much
one
time with them,
scene. I wrote
Oh,
one scene in particular, and it was difficult's not the word. Like, it was harrowing. Like, I had to take like a
mm.
couple. I know this sounds really cheesy, but I had to take like an hour to myself after.
No,
I
yeah,
had to
yeah.
like sit and like I was like, I mean, I don't drink anymore, but if I did, I
Thought about
definitely would have had a
it.
strong drink. Do you know what I mean? I was
Yeah,
like,
no, totally.
because, and I think it was because it was one of the characters I've thought about the most, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I've got a couple of POV chapters and everything for that character, and um, yeah, when I had to write them out, it hit me so hard because you spend so much time, and you'll know this from writing characters, you spend so much time bringing them to actual life in your head.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I know that for a reader, they can be brought to life on the page, and they can have a sense of what they look like and maybe what their mannerisms are. But you, as a writer, and I, as a writer, know what our characters are. You know who they are, and you know what they think. Like, the reader doesn't necessarily know what they think, but
Yeah,
in
yeah.
your head, you've got an idea of how would they react to this and why would they react that way. And it goes beyond just writing it so that the reader can read it. It's, you have to understand that character in such a way that, I don't know, like the whole kill your darlings thing was always, I was like, that doesn't matter. It's just it matters. I felt it.
Yeah, you like kill. Well, like I had this one character, and he's been developing for 14 years, and there are some things that I did to him in book 1 where I'm just like, oh, like I think that's the real thing where I had to step back, and I haven't been able to go back because now I have other things, that I'm changing, and I'm like, if this is hitting me this hard, I'm hoping, that the readers feel it as well, between
Yeah.
book 1 and book 3. But I totally get it. It's like it is. I think it is really hard to explain to people because you are like essentially like if you're doing that, you're essentially killing like a part of yourself on
Yeah.
purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
if you do that, it's like unless you're doing like a prequel or a novella or a short story or something, it's like you are killing that person, so you are killing that essentially that part of yourself. And then you have to, I think, not only deal with that, but I think you have to also, because you have so many characters. I know I have like 60, but it's like each of them's different in like a different part. So, and you have, right, like you literally give them birth, it's like, I think like that's essentially what you're doing, right? And I think it
Yeah.
is a lot harder than people say. I had a friend recently that did that, and I won't say who to people, but you know, like they were like, I just can't do this anymore. I'm like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? They're like, I think this is the only other book that I can kill my darlings. They're like, it was just so, and they were, I mean, they're older than both of us. And, you know, they were like, this has been like 25, 27 years in the making. And then now they're gone, you know, and they're
Yeah.
like, they're constantly there, you know, and for
Yeah.
5 books or whatever. And I'm just like, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I can do that. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah,
It
it's
was my beta readers gave me some specific feedback on those scenes, and it seems like people were like satisfied, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Because my beta readers are literally amazing. So some of them are like really good friends of mine, and because of that, they can give really candid feedback, and they know I'll take it how it's meant, and if it's constructive,
Those are the
I'll
best.
use it. But they were like, that was probably the scene I was most worried about. And the feedback has been, I think they were sad, but that's kind of what I wanted. Like one of my beta readers was like, I can't believe I'm crying, like in brackets. And I was like, that's kind of the desired effect. But at the same time, like it sucks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I totally understand that. All right. Now I'm like all emotional.
I know, me too. I'm like thinking back on that scene, I'm like, when I have to edit that and when I have to send that to my editor, I hope I don't have to make it any worse.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah. No, I totally understand that one. So you said that you were done with book 3 then.
Yeah.
Now what has your overall experience been with developing your characters between the different books?
To be honest, I feel like character development's not my strongest point.
I feel that.
I think a lot of the feedback I got in like early reviews and stuff was that it was very like plot driven and not character driven. So I consciously tried not to change the way I wrote them because I didn't want them to then be really rapidly overdeveloped as I kind of got more confident, if that makes any sense.
No, it totally does.
So it definitely became a struggle with like book 3 because there were certain elements of like Ogulf's character arc that I felt like I lost his voice in my head. I felt like I had other POV characters that I was just able to, I don't know, like fall into that character in my head. Like there's a character called Nadrith who's obviously like the big bad evil king, like driving force behind this army that's messing everything up, and I could fall into him. Like I would do the voices and be sitting in my office and I would be saying the things he was saying, but I'd be putting on like a voice and I would be moving my face a way that I would think he would, just to see like what it would be like. But Ogulf, who is my main character and probably the most important character in the story, I found it really difficult by book 3 to like fall into his mindset.
Yeah.
So that was definitely tough. I don't know why. I don't know if it was because he was maybe underdeveloped from early on.
Oh, okay.
Because it was so plot driven. I don't know if I maybe hadn't established myself in Ogulf's arc myself as much as I thought I had. Maybe Ogulf to me was the plot, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does.
He was just the driver, whereas everybody else had a bit more development because they were accentuating that. So it was definitely hard. I think I've got like other things I would like to work on one day where I'm definitely more conscious of character development, and it's because of some of the books I've read recently. I mean, just to give like 2 shout outs to 2 books that I've really, really enjoyed. Dragon Mage by Emil Spencer, and then Of Darkness and Light by Ryan Cahill. Both of them I think are absolutely fantastic representations of character development, and just how they take you from these characters being effectively nothing, and the way they develop them in the stories is just amazing. And I think it made me realize what my characters were missing. So definitely something I would like to work on.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I worry about that a lot. I think that's why I had a couple characters. They're like, yeah, we're not in this book, and I'm like, the hell you aren't. I'm like, you're right here. And so 2 left, and then they're like, we want to stay together and we want to do this other thing. And I was like, God, that sounds so much cooler. So I'm like, okay, like I'm like, I don't like you anymore, so just go. And then I had like 3 other characters pop in, and they're like, actually, we're in this book. And I'm like, fine, whatever. And then I had one who he completely switched classes, and social classes and just his job profession. And my best friend was like, God, that sounds so much cooler. And I'm like, I know it does. And
Yeah.
then I saw the two, and now I'm like, well, that changes everything for you guys. And yeah, but I worry about that because now I'm like, oh, now I'm like to start basically over for draft two. And then I just feel like character development for me, I'm always, because I love character development, I love, how people, give you this rough piece of wood, and then by the end it's this exquisite, Harry Dresden's one of those where it's like, I feel like he goes through so much character development and it just adds to the story. And I just always worry that, that's definitely something with beta readers in the future that I'm going to be like,
Yeah.
and, my writing friends be like, hey, tell me the truth. Like, did you think
Yeah.
this character, that's the one thing I just feel like I also struggle with. World building, I don't feel like I struggle with that. People tell me like that's a strength. I definitely don't, like show, don't tell kind of thing. Is definitely, I've been working on. I feel like I've gotten a little bit better, but yeah, character development, I think is just one of those out there where it's like, I think you just need, it's like what I told my girls the other day for like we had like 2 games. Most of them have never played lacrosse before. And to see them go from like week 1 to now where they played 2 games and have complete confidence, I really think that's how people are with books too, and just
Yeah.
projects, and I think at a certain point you just need the experience. You just have to finish things and develop them. And, it's like you can read as many books on character development as you want, but until you actually do it.
You learn yourself. Like
Yep.
I've got like a cupboard full of books that were for like helping people write and everything. And obviously I read them and I took them in, but then I felt like I was relying on them too much. And I was just like, no, easiest way to do something is to practice. And it would be writing, drafting, sending it to someone. And it was interesting you said like your like the lacrosse team like going from week 1 to week 3, how they've progressed. And that's where I think my character development didn't stand up, because I didn't really show any progression. It literally starts at one point and then you're just moving through the story like through both eyes. So I don't really feel like you got to see him progress as such. Whereas the books I referenced before, like Dragon Mage and the Bound and Broken series by Ryan Cahill, like you start early on with the characters and a lot more time passes. So they are developing in huge ways, but the story's still moving in such a nice way that even though lots of time's passing, things are happening to move it along. It's all tied together beautifully and relevantly. Whereas I think mine's is crammed into like a month in my head.
Yeah.
A month and a bit. Do you know what I mean? It's a very short time period compared. So because of that, I think development maybe stalled a little.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a critique class now.
That's fair. Well, I definitely think it's important for people, to know, because some people I had talked to the other day about this where, there was a very similar situation. My friend asked, did you like these books? I said, yes, I did. And he said, well, what was the one thing, and I said a similar thing with a character. I said, well, character development for this character was underdone. I said, but I love the books. I said, I love the characters. I love the books. I said, just from a writing standpoint, it's kind of hard. That's how I felt like Eternals was too, like the Marvel movie. Like they had such great characters, and I haven't even finished the movie because a thing happened, and I'm just like, I just couldn't get over it. And then it changes the entire movie, and I'm like, I do want to finish it just as from a writing standpoint, like on what not to do. And at least for myself, if I promise this thing and then do this thing, I just, it was interesting. I just felt like same thing. Like, there was a certain character that was underdeveloped, and I felt like it ended up completely, destroying the plot for me, and it really pulled me out of it, and I just think it's, those kind of things. I think, my friend's like, well, how is that possible? I said, well, I still like things about the movie. I said, I thought they did X, Y, and Z. I said, that's how I felt about this, this trilogy of books that I read recently. And I'm like, it just, I said, I think it's a lot similar to how people feel about the Dark Tower, where, they love the series. It's great, but a lot of people said the ending was underwhelming. I'm still going to read it, and you never know. Maybe I don't find it underwhelming, and maybe I learned something that way, on what to do or what not to do. But yeah, I definitely think
it's hilarious when you look at that as an example, and then if you look at like The Stand, I don't know if you read The Stand, but The Stand is like chock full of development and massive character arcs where you're like, why, like, and it's so apparent why everyone is different and everyone's relevant. But then you do get other novels by the same authors who maybe don't have the same kind of trajectory for development for characters. But it's a strange one.
Yeah. No, it's funny because everybody always mentions The Stand for that one. It's
Oh, I have like the oldest. I mean, I don't know what it is right now,
I don't think I've
but I
read
have like
that since like middle school, so I want to
oh,
go back to it. It's had to have been. Ooh, it's scary. I think it's almost been 2 decades. It's kind
I
of
don't know where
scary.
my copy is, but I have like I've got like the old like library style from the
Oh, that's
80s.
cool.
Oh, I just can't part ways with it. I love it so
Yeah.
much.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, those are. I think that's definitely the best copy. That's definitely what I read in our old dusty library back in the day.
But like the pages are so thin.
Yeah. I definitely was like afraid of ripping them. By that time,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
like
same.
it was like 2000. It was almost like yeah, it was like 2000 actually, 2001 because it was the year that 9/11 happened for us. So yeah,
Right.
like definitely remember like reading it that year. I read that. The Hobbit. Um, oh, there was another one too by Stephen King. I read something else. It was like that was like the year for reading for me. Oh, A Knight's Word, and I always blank on who it was. It's like an older like D&D style like fantasy.
Hmm.
Um, oh, it's such a good book. And I think the author only wrote like 2 books ever, but it like those are like it's funny when you think about those, which kind of leads me to my next question. There's certain books that definitely have influenced me, to want to write, definitely to read, but definitely want to write. So, who are some authors or writers that have inspired you to write?
Yeah. I mean, it was one of them was definitely Michael J. Sullivan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, just a phenomenal writer.
yeah.
I think another one that was probably the most important because of when I read it in relation to when I was thinking about writing was James Islington, like the Lycaonians
Ooh,
trilogy. So I don't know, I just loved that
yeah.
trilogy. I devoured it. It was really, really, really good. But I think that the world building in that and the characters in that, it, I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I read that and thought I could do this. Like it's not
Oh
like I
yeah.
thought it would be easy. It was more just like this is amazing. I have these ideas. I could totally put this to paper. And in fact, when I first started, I reached out to 2 authors for feedback.
No,
One of
that's
them
cool.
was Michael J. Sullivan, and one of them was
Oh, that's
James
cool.
Islington. James Islington wasn't available for feedback or like assistance or anything like that. But Michael J. Sullivan, I sent him like the first 3 pages of Cold from the North, and he sent back, and it was like the opening line in Cold from the North is let me just check it. But it's the opening line is the mud was hard as stone, and it's basically describing a scene where Ogo's trying to like break through mud and it's really cold and he can't break through it. He's getting frustrated. And I remember being like, I can't wait to see what Michael J. Sullivan says about this. He said he's going to look at it, and he just his opening line, what to it was, thank you very much for sending this. That opening sentence though, was that the best you can do? And I was like, oh shit. So this was like pre-publish. I hadn't published anything. This was still when it was very much a draft. And I remember just being like, he hates it. I can't do this. And it wasn't that at all. And now like looking back and like at the comments and things he said were really helpful. But um yeah, he definitely inspired me because I read his books first, but then he kind of gave me like a kick up the ass. And I think the fact that he even replied to me when I was like super early in that journey was it was amazing. I was
Yeah.
quite shocked. But he was yeah, it was great.
Having met him in person, I bought like I was saying to you before we started recording, I bought the one book, had him sign it, and then I went back through actually and talked to him like 2 more times. This was like a huge
Yeah.
signing, like with all these authors at this independent store. Like I had to wait the second time, and this is Phoenix, in like April, so it's already like over 100
Oh,
degrees. So I'm
yeah,
like
yeah.
out there. I like my wife. She was like, "You were there all day." I got there at like 8:30 in the morning. I got in once, went back out to my car, so I had to wait in line again. And then
Yeah.
I mean, I literally was there until they closed at like 10:30 at night. But I talked to him twice, so that actually he's so humorous. And like
Yeah.
I said to my friend recently, I said, I feel like people don't get my humor sometimes because like over online, because I'm like, if you meet me in person, I think you'd be like, oh, he just rarely takes things seriously, like he's just always
Yeah.
joking. And I could totally see him sending that. So that's really funny.
Well, I was really like thrown because he's like the image and stuff on the book and the image on his website looks like this image from the 80s where he's like proper like formal and he's like sitting like doing on the side of the head. And I was like, he's either going to come back and he's going to be like teacher style critical, or he's going to be really like laid back and just be like, yeah, it's okay. But he was like in the middle of it, and I was just like, ah, oh, I just want to like phone him up and be like,
Yeah,
hey
yeah,
man, break it down for me a little bit more. I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. He's
Yeah,
like one of my golden, my white whales and
yeah.
my golden geese. Like I'm like, I can't wait to have him on one of these days. And I
Oh
wish I
yeah,
had
that would
the
be
picture
amazing.
I took with him, but my old phone was on my old phone and there wasn't the cloud at that time. So I totally lost it. Like the only ones I still have are me and Brandon and me and Kevin from that day. But yeah, I keep trying to think like, oh, maybe it'll pop up on, Facebook somewhere, Instagram or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, he was really cool to me. I'd highly recommend if anybody, has an opportunity. Michael J. Sullivan, he was awesome. He was definitely one of my favorite authors to me. So all right, so that last one there, any news, updates, promos, or current projects that you'd like to share with us?
So book 3 of the Onyx Spawn Chronicles is called The Fury of Fate. And I think I put a date on it of when it'll be released, which I regret now, obviously, because life moves fast. But I believe it's coming out on the 30th of July.
Oh, cool.
It's subject to change because I am impulsive. Um, but that's the third and final book of the Onyx Spawn Chronicles. So it ties everything up really nicely. I say really nicely. It's full of blood. It's full of guts. It's full of gore. It's full of war. But it ties up the story in a way that I'm very satisfied with. I think it's the best thing I've ever written. I'm very confident that it
Oh,
is.
cool.
Um, I just can't wait for it to be out there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because to be completely honest, I don't really do the whole marketing thing. I don't go, hey, buy my books. I'm not that kind of person. But I'm just so excited for it to be out there and for people maybe to go 1, 2, 3, read the series in a quick succession and just enjoy it. It's out there. People don't have to wait or anything. It's just there. They can get it.
Yeah, yeah.
And after that, I'll probably take a very brief break, and then I will be continuing with a project I've been working on. It's a 5-book series.
Oh, cool.
The background for the series is based on Scottish and Celtic kind of
Oh,
myth and legend. So it's based in a
that's
kind
awesome.
of, it's, I would say, like a alternative Scotland. It's probably going to be quite low fantasy. I doubt it'll have any magic in it as such. But it's going to be full of clans. It's going to be full of battles. Hopefully, it's going to be full of character development because I hope I don't suck at it anymore. But yeah, this is my new baby where we will see what comes of this. But I feel like it will be interesting to say the least.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But yeah,
definitely
that's
down.
that's it.
Definitely down for a pre-order. So you got one sold already. So
Oh, dude, you can just be like, you can be a beta reader. I'll just send you it as soon as I've got like a
oh
draft.
yeah, yeah,
You can
that'd be
do,
great. Yeah. I would love
you
to see
can
how
do
you
what
did
Michael J.
everything.
Sullivan did. You can just message back and go, "Is that the best you've got?" Like,
Well, I'm definitely gonna do what he did on that first few book covers, and I'm definitely gonna send it to you that way. I'm gonna have my suit jacket on and
yeah,
make
like
sure
a
I'm
like a
looking good.
photo taken in like a Walmart.
Yeah, dude. My friend asked, he's like, how do you want yours to be? I'm like, I just always loved his. I was like, I just
Yeah,
want that. I was like, that's what I'm thinking. And he's like, he just laughs at me. He goes, you would. And I was like, and then he read Age of Myth recently. He goes, okay, I get it.
yeah,
And I'm like, right? I'm like, they say
yeah.
dress for the job that you want. I said, I want to be Michael J. Sullivan. So I feel like, that's what I'm
I
gonna
get
do.
that.
So that's
I
awesome.
get that, dude.
Well, now I'm gonna have to tell people when they do their secret projects, like to hold something up because that's just so much more tantalizing than
Oh, I know.
talking
I'm
about.
like, oh, yeah. It was my beautiful wife got me this because she knew I wanted to write something new, and she knew I needed something fresh for it. So nice and bound, and has D.W. Ross
Yeah, that's
jammed in
awesome.
it. So
Definitely,
yeah,
definitely want like 10 of those. So
oh for sure. Like it's beautiful.
that's awesome. All right, my friend. Well, I really appreciate you for coming. I'm so glad that we could finally have you on. Let me know if you get closer to July or whatever date you pick. If you want to come back and we pop another episode real quick out there for you, talk maybe more in depth, about book 3 or something like that. Totally fine. Anything we can do to help you out with that, or or in the future. If you just want to
Yeah,
come by and chit chat about anything writing or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
something
would love
on your
that.
mind, yeah, just hit me up and we'll get you going. Just as a reminder to our audience, so DW Ross, you can find everything for him in the description per usual. Spotify, YouTube, rss.com. Please don't forget to share this episode. It's not for me, it's for authors like Ross here, and we want to make sure that people are going and getting their books. So that's the whole reason we do this whole thing. So my friend, I hope you have a great rest of the day. I'm really looking forward to talking on social media. As soon as I get my draft done, hopefully the next couple months here with my historical urban fantasy, I'll send it to you and you can pull Michael J.
Please
Sullivan on
do.
me. So
No, I don't know. Please do. I will be on downtime, let's just say,
oh, cool.
between books. So please feel free to. That would be amazing. And just to say thank you so much. That was really,
Yeah.
really fun.
Yeah, it was
I
awesome.
had a blast and I look forward to chatting again. Maybe
Perfect.
one day I can interview you. Who knows? We
Yeah,
could be
yeah.
together.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know I'm trying to work out how to do that, but there's so many things I want to pick your mind on. So we'll do it another time. But it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
lovely today. Have a great day, my man.
You too, my friend. Have a good one.
You too. See you, man.
Bye.